Now that we've begun to learn some basic movements and begun to explore the really interesting paradigm of structural movement, we've got some concrete anchors upon which we can start to think about what is, after all, the core of Yiquan, and that's isometric training, or Zhan Zhuang. I don't think either of those terms really sum up what we want to do with Zhan Zhuang and how we should really think about it. It's not just isometric training, and it's not just this ancient spiritual thing that's evoked by the phrase Zhan Zhuang. But we need terms and ways of talking about these things that helps us to get on the path of experiential learning. And that's something that I very much want to encourage, particularly as we now move into talking about Zhan Zhuang and thinking about how we can integrate that in with our structural movement paradigm. And the reason we want to use Zhan Zhuang, isometric posture holding, is because actually there's levels beyond the structural movement that we've looked at so far. That's all really important, and everything's right about that. But there are levels and finer grades of structural movement that we want to, and also reactions that we want to explore, encourage, unfold, including being able to use much shorter movements and being able to use our bodies in much more sophisticated structural ways. So there's lots of stuff that's talked about Zhan Zhuang, and we've got to think, like, also there's lots of stuff that's talked about Yiquan, and lots of it's very contradictory with what other people are saying, and you can find yourself lost a little bit, I think, wondering which is right here, who is right in what they're saying. What I'm going to say is Zhang Zhangfeng, the legendary founder of Taiji Chuan, is supposed to have said, I don't know if this is true, I got it from a movie, but in this movie he says, water nourishes all things and is in competition with nothing. And I think, like, think about that. Like, what does the theory produce? What does it nourish? Nourish all things, and we're not in competition with anyone, because what we say just nourishes, and that's a fact. So, having said that, then I'm not gonna get too deep into what other people have said about Zhan Zhuang and why. What I would encourage people to do is to think about something Han Huang, one of Wang Shenjai's students, says, which is, does the theory knit together with the outcomes, and can you see outcomes and theory as one holistic system, and does it all make sense? As Han Huang also says, like, if you think like just holding postures in stillness are somehow going to teach you how to fight, then you have left the path. You've left the path of wisdom. There's no way that could happen unless you believe that some kind of supernatural force enters your body, which some people do argue, let's be honest. In which case, why would you ever have to do this? Like, to hold postures, to put muscles under strain, why would you ever have to even do that? Is there something magical about the shape of the posture that attracts the supernatural force or something? It just doesn't add up, it doesn't make any sense. So what is Zhan Zhuang? Well, it's holding postures in stillness. And this is a really interesting idea, and it comes from multiple different sources, so it's not just one thing, it includes different elements that have historically come together to form it. So we know that there's some element of meditation involved, but as Wang Demo says, like, the purpose is very different to, like, Buddhist meditation. In Buddhist meditation, you're kind of annihilating thought. The idea is to annihilate your sense of self, whereas in Yiquan, the idea is, when you break it down into stillness, you begin a complete, like almost the opposite, like Wang Shenjai calls this re-understanding yourself. So it's a very different, and also we use mental content, which is very different to Zen meditation and some forms of Taoist meditation that we know about. The point of Zhan Zhuang is to reconnect your will to your physical form. It's as simple as that, and it's as complex as that, because that's nowhere near, that very simple way of looking at it is just a starting off point. Reconnect your will to your physical form. And will is one of the many things that we can interpret the word I as meaning Y-I. And like Wang Demo says, like, well, we just use that word as a shorthand. Like, it covers lots of different things. Your intent, your intention, if you want to differentiate those two concepts, your mind, your will, so there's lots of different things, your imagination, all of these things can become integrated within this singular concept. So don't get caught up in the singular concept. We can expand that as we go along. It's just to help us learn. What does that mean then to reconnect intention with the body? Well, it's all the kind of stuff I've talked about before, that through a process of socialization, the link between body and mind gets separated, and it has lots of other knock-on effects. It creates like partiality and segregation in different parts of the body. The body starts becoming separated into different units that are used for different things, and there's no sense, or that sense of whole body connectivity that we're trying to achieve in structural movement, that's been socialized out of us. And we want to reconnect that. So we don't just want to reconnect the mind and the body, the will and the body. I think will's more active than mind. Will implies like that we want to do, that we want to command the body. And of course, lots of things do that. Lots of sports do that. Zhan Zhuang says every martial art uses Zhan Zhuang. The reason that he says that is that we're talking about structure. Zhan Zhuang is just a structure, forming a structure. And every martial art does that. Every martial art uses structure. All we're doing is, as a training exercise, we're breaking it down to a single moment. And by doing that, there's a range of things that we can then feel and explore and play with in terms of physical movement and qualities of physical feeling that are in the body that you don't get when you're just using movement, when you're just moving through forms or just training or something like that. So only in Yiquan is like this absolutely foregrounded, that you take it to this point of a moment of stillness. And what you do then is you start feeling different things that you otherwise can't feel, that are in many cases subtle or require subtlety in the way that you're training to experience those feelings. And what that does is it starts setting puzzles for the body. So remember, I talked about Yiquan being gamified. This is a really great example. Like it sets puzzles for the body around different interactions of tension and mental activity and movement within movement and micro movement, relaxation of muscles, contradictions of different parts of the body working in different ways. It sets all these different puzzles, and we've got various different ways of standing and different visualizations that set these puzzles for us or help us to understand these puzzles. And we've got to solve them. We've got to solve those puzzles through our process of standing and using like the two elements of Zhan Zhuang, one of which is holding a posture in stillness, putting the muscles under a little bit of strain, and then the second part using what we call mental induction. We can say visualizations for now and pretend that it's that simple. So our process of training is going to be like solving these problems one by one, and that's very useful to think about it like that, because Zhan Zhuang doesn't just do one thing, and the things that it can do changes and becomes more sophisticated the more experienced you are with it, and the more you reach different levels, the more you can do. And these are all tiered, like different levels of puzzle that we've got to solve with our own body, like thinking about our own body like a puzzle box, that a lot of that work's going on, people can't even see it, things that are going on inside our own body. And the first one, I suppose, like conceptually and practically, there's differences in what comes first. So conceptually, there's the idea of what we call a dialectical relationship. So like the idea of things that are quite different or opposite that work together to create something new. So that's obviously like a kind of yin yang idea. And conceptually, the idea in each one is that the biggest contradiction of all is between your intent and your physical form. They're two things of entirely qualitatively different, substance, if you like, that somehow interacts through the central nervous system, that what is conscious will connects into the body through the central nervous system and out into the nerves. Let's begin exploring the puzzle. Then that's a lot of talking, isn't it? And not a lot of explaining anything. And I want to get people working on this. So the two elements of Zhan Zhuang, the two key elements that we need to think about are mental activity and the physical posture. So in terms of mental activity, the idea is very, very simple, and you can, like, I want people to really engage with Yiquan and really think about these concepts and follow exercises that really help you understand this. So the idea that the mind can have a powerful effect on the body, and that, I think at one time that seemed quite wishy-washy, but I think now we understand, like, a lot of stuff around stress, things like that, that tension plays an enormous role, and things like, I was watching the snooker the other day, and it's got to a real, I know not everyone finds snooker exciting, but for me it's got to a very exciting point, and someone's down playing a shot, and it all goes wrong, like, and he's a top level professional snooker player, but the stress of the moment puts the tension in his body and he misses the shot. Of course, we know that happens all the time. So what I'd like people to do is have a think about 10 things. Make a list of 10 things where the mind affects the body, and try and think of some positive and some negative, where the mind has real effects on the body, just like a change of mental state causes an actual physical change of some kind in the body. And I think by doing that, then it really kind of opens your mind, and you start thinking, yeah, right, okay. When you think about it, like, that's really obvious. And there's lots of ways that we want to use that in each one. So one of the most important, like, absolutely foundation concept is that we want to learn to relax. And this is based on the idea that not only are we not relaxed because of tension and stress, but it's just in the nature of the social system that everyone is brought up in, that you've got to be doing, you've got to work, and some systems are worse than others, I think. And let's face it, like, the bosses would rather you use more. They'd rather you were overusing your muscles than underusing them in whatever task it is, or overusing your mind than underusing it. They want as much productivity out of you as they possibly can. So one of the key ideas in each one is, like, we don't use our bodies efficiently. We use too much muscle strength, too much muscular strength to do almost everything. And then when we need to use muscular strength to generate power, that means that we can't generate the kind of power that we need to, or do the kind of feats of strength that we need to with guiding force and so on. That all of this stems from different kinds of tension in the body. So that's like our first puzzle that we need to solve, that we've got to, this puzzle box of the self. And we can do some really interesting experiments with this. And Yiquan talks about this idea that it's very useful to start thinking about the feet first, rather before we start even thinking about holding the arms up and putting the arms under stress. So this really simple exercise that is how standing meditation has been done in Tai Chi Chuan for a very long time, where you just stand, bend the knees slightly, like you're just sitting on something, just relax the arms, because we're not worried about the arms at the moment. We're worried about the legs, but don't worry about the legs. As my coach used to say, relax! The most unrelaxing way possible. We want to feel not just relaxed, we want to feel a moment of relaxation. So this is going to happen in 2 stages probably. So this begins now to talk about the idea of how long you should be standing for. So it's not really about time. The issue is that some things will only happen after a certain amount of time. So it's not like the more you stand, like the more qi goes into your body or something like that. And Yao Zhongzhong particularly talks about that being a really silly idea. It's not about volume in that sense. The reason for standing for longer periods is that you have to do that to put enough pressure on the muscles and the body to create certain effects that we want to achieve. And it won't happen. Usually, for example, if you just stand for 2 minutes like this, the effect that we want won't happen. So what we're going to do is we're just going to stand. We're just going to stand like this, and we're going to use a really, really simple form of mental induction. Remember, that's a key concept in Zhan Zhuang. A really simple, it's not even a visualization, we're just going to put our attention on the muscles at the top of the leg, here. And we're going to try and tell them to relax. We're going to try and send a message, but we're not going to do it verbally. We're just going to focus on them, and we're going to try and make them relax. Actually, this helps you to stand for a longer period because it changes your mental content. One of the things that standing does that's really, really interesting is like affects your perception of time. This is one of the reasons why I say, like, for the most part, you shouldn't time yourself. I'll give a really good example. Like, I had a student who's on the punch bag, wanted him to do half an hour, and I was there in the gym. Thought, well, I'll just do standing, and I'm absolutely fine. I'm just standing. I could just keep standing. Could stand there for another half an hour, but it gets to 28 minutes, and I glance at the clock and I see it's 28 minutes. And all of a sudden, the next 2 minutes, suddenly I start feeling like much more tired and tension. And just because there's 2 minutes to go to half an hour, and it induced tension in my body, just thinking, well, I'm going to stop in a minute. So standing has this really interesting relationship with time. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later, not timing yourself like that. Don't fetishize it. So just standing, and try and quieten your mind as much as you can and just focus. Like, different thoughts are going to come and go, and that doesn't matter at all. But you just keep bringing your focus back to the muscles around the top of the leg, and particularly around your knees. And there's a few things that we want to look out for here. The first thing is the knee pop. So usually, really, pretty much everyone overuses muscular strength to stand, and we're going to see that later on when we get into a particular kind of posture where it feels like you're very light, and we'll explain that in a moment. We use a massive amount of unnecessary muscular tension to stand, and when you bend the legs a little bit like we're doing now, so that the muscles have actually got to tense a little bit, well, that massively increases that effect, because you're not just standing on your bones like that, so you can just let the muscles go a little bit. Beware doing that. That's not what we want. We want the muscles under a little bit of pressure. And then what's going to happen is, when you manage to make a muscle relax, it's just going to give up. It's going to over relax. It's going to over relax, and you're going to go like that, and you're going to ping out like that. I've recognised, by the way, that not everyone can stand up or use their legs, and we need separate exercises for people with different disabilities. But we'll start like this for now. And it's going to ping out like that, and that's a really common thing that people find. That's probably going to happen after about 5 minutes. After about 10 minutes, usually 10 minutes is a really good marker point when you start feeling. That's when you start feeling qualitative changes in things, and you get like something that you probably never even noticed before, and that's you scrunch up your knees like that. Like, the muscle feels like it's scrunched up, and you just feel it unscrunch like that. Feel the muscles, and it'll happen. Usually won't happen both knees at the same time, it'll be one or the other, and you'll realise how tense your knees are. This comes back, by the way. So, like, if I have a stressful day at work and I come home and I'm standing, and then it comes back, and then it's got to be released again. So your body's always in this kind of battle with the tensions of the social world that you exist in. But you'll feel your knees unscrunch, and sometimes the knee will unscrunch and it will also pop like that, or this one will unscrunch and it will pop. It doesn't pop out, but the muscle just gives way, and then it overreacts like that. So that's our first exercise, just to stand like that and just start playing, just unpack this puzzle. And the way you solve this puzzle is to try and use mental induction to relax the legs as much as possible, but without these effects. The unscrunching effect, that's absolutely fine. That's just the tension giving way. So get to that point, but you want to solve this popping out like that. And if you take it a little bit further, if you're a little bit more disciplined, and you can take it for maybe around 20 minutes, then you might start getting some leg shakes and things like that. All this is about is just learning to relax appropriately, to use the right amount of muscle, so you can get a good level of relaxation. But it might take another year or something like that before you really start to refine it, and then there's a lifetime of other things because we move on to the next puzzle. That's the next puzzle. So that's our first basic way of using mental induction. And then if you want to take it a little bit further, we can go further along with this puzzle, and we can start playing with a different puzzle. And one of the things that we learn is what your muscles are doing all the time when you stand like this is balancing you. It's making micro decisions about how to ensure that you don't fall over, and sometimes you will, and it still happens to me sometimes where I go like that and I stumble. But think about someone learning to ride a bike and they can't at first make the intuitive calculations. That's their intention, linking into the physical form and making micro adjustments to the posture. But in exactly the same way, we do that just to balance, just to walk around. But the theory in each one is like we overuse muscles. And what we want to do is absolutely refine it down to like the finest grained micro adjustment of movement. So it's absolutely like the absolute minimal that you need to do. And that's our next puzzle to solve. So the easiest way to do that is to close your eyes, and you'll soon start feeling like the moment you close your eyes, you lose a lot of the data that your intention is using to do this posture, and then it's just all down to the muscles, and you feel it straight away. You can feel kind of seasickness straight away. Some people have that more than others, but close your eyes and then work on the balance. And again, bring your intention into that part of the body and just feel like you're making those micro adjustments. I know this seems like nothing. These ideas seem like nothing. It's not like doing a massive workout on a punch bag or something like that. But these are graduated, so they start with these really simple exercises and they move up into more and more sophisticated and complex exercises, so don't worry. The most important thing is you want to start feeling it. You want to start feeling the muscles making the micro adjustments to balance you like that. And you start swaying. First of all, people start swaying and be doing this, and then very often stumble and fall over like that. Right? And that is really powerful data that your intention can use. Just like when you're riding a bike and you keep falling off, it's using that data to make its own ability to stabilize those muscles more sophisticated. It's astonishing. It's just absolutely astonishing how many people just fall over and stumble when they're doing that. And this is going to lead into things like we see all the time, like so a really interesting thing that I see like is when people do Mosabu and I say, right, well, your weight's forward and I don't want you to lift up or anything, I just want you to slide the foot forward like that. It's such a simple exercise. The amount of people I see who are just like, I can't move my foot. So step by step and I say like it's about muscles in a way, but it's not about muscular strength. It's about how you're using the muscles that you've already got, that you feel like you haven't got because you can't narrow it down to the particular muscles that you need and fire them. In many cases, they've just been kind of dormant because they've just been overwhelmed by gross and indeed often grotesque use of muscular strength that's totally unnecessary in everyday movement. Now, that will begin to expand. So like really simple exercises like this, begin to expand in things like being able to hold your leg out and do stuff like this that are nothing to do. I haven't got particularly muscular legs or anything like that. Being able to do that kind of posture because it's not an issue of strength, it's an issue of being able to relax and tense in the right perfect proportions to do postures like that. So we begin solving this puzzle of balance, and then that leads on to another really interesting puzzle. We haven't even started doing anything like this yet. We've just started to look at one of the most basic things that Zhan Zhuang does, and that's just helping us to learn first to relax our muscles and then to use those muscles in a more efficient way. By practicing like this and actually doing it, you learn it experientially. So the next puzzle, and this, it might happen earlier on or it might take a little bit longer. It might, you might want to stand like this for 20 minutes, 30 minutes maybe. 20 minutes is usually fine. We're going to try and create a particular interesting effect. And it's the idea that you feel really light and you want to fly away. And I think it's one of the most abstract concepts when people talk about Zhan Zhuang and Yiquan. Not to be confused with the posture of a bird wanting to fly away from your hand, which is when you hold your hand quite loose like that. I'll talk about it another time. This is a posture that you feel really light, like you would take off from the floor. And it's one of the things that Wang Shenjai talks about as one of the key indicators that you're looking for in Zhan Zhuang. But really, it's a really simple thing. So if you've gone through all those other stages and solved all those other puzzles, then we try and get a different feeling. So in traditional wushu, there's an idea that like only this part of your body is the leg. This is a separate limb. This is the leg, and the legs are like two stakes that are fixed into the ground. And you're going to stand on a stake, which is one of the ways of interpreting the phrase Zhan Zhuang itself. You stand on a stake, and your knees are bent just like before. So it's exactly the same posture. You still don't need to do anything with your arms whatsoever, but you can if you want. So now if you want, you can start changing and using this, which is very often used as an intermediate, as a basic posture, like a beginner's posture, to start teaching these exercises. So at this stage, if you're going to do 20 minutes, start bringing your arms in like this, so they're bent at the wrist and like that. But that doesn't really matter that much at this point. So what we want to do is reach a certain point of relaxation, and it can only come after a certain amount of time. It's this very important dialectical principle that a certain amount of quantity changes at a certain point into a certain amount into a different quality. So it's not about timing yourself and saying, oh, I did 7 hours standing or something ridiculous. It's not about that at all. Different people can get it at different times of standing, but usually for everyone, it takes a certain amount of time before you get these effects. It's just something to do with the way you're holding a posture that causes these physical effects. So it does take a little bit of time. So it might be 20 minutes or something like that. And by now you're quite good at relaxing these muscles, and you get a feeling that's very much like you're balancing perfectly. So once you're absolutely perfectly balanced, and you can see why you've got to go through these other stages, because it's the absolute finest motor control of the muscles that are balancing you. So most of that muscle is now relaxed. And then you start realizing, like, wow, and you will feel it. I'm telling you, you'll feel actually muscles just give way like that. Just like when you started doing that, but then later on they give way and you don't do that. They just give way to the perfect. And then when it does that, when it releases like that, then you realize how much tension there is in your body. That's one of the first. When you start solving that puzzle, then you start seeing the bigger puzzle and the bigger picture. It starts making a lot more sense. It has to be experiential, because people are so tense in their bodies, they have no idea. They've lived with it for so long, they have no idea. But when you start experiencing this, then eventually you can really balance with really fine-grained use of balance. You start getting a really strange effect that you feel really light, that you just you relax so much in your legs, and so much tension goes away that your legs feel lighter, and you also sometimes start getting, well, it is almost like a feeling of numbness, and you start feeling like a lot of what your body feels like, what you think your body feels like, a lot of it is tension. That's absolutely unbelievable. It's almost like we're clinging on to existing in this reality. That's kind of a spiritual, Buddhist, we're making ourselves more materially present in this reality by being, and you can feel, if you tense like that, you can feel your whole body more, and you start realizing that. So you get this feeling like your legs are like become a bit numb at first, and then you just feel like you could fly away. Like you just feel like so light, your legs are so light. Your bottom part of your leg are absolutely firmly rooted in the ground, and the rest is just balancing on top of it. And you feel completely light. That feeling of numbness will change later on to like just higher sensitivity in terms of your, not like to pain as such, not in that sense, but being able to feel your body more. And that's going to be a really key, important element of our proprioception, our intention linking into our body and being able to use the body more efficiently. So the picture in our head of what we want to do and what our body actually does is going to link together much more closely, because now we can actually feel ourselves better. We can feel our body on a, I want to say like a more intimate level. And I think it is very much like that, like physical contact, and sexuality is a very good example of, you know, and how very often like bad sex is very tense, you know, like people are tense, and then when you relax, you know, it's supposed to be fun. Something I think that's been lost a lot in the modern era. It's supposed to be fun. A more intimate relationship with your own body, that you can feel everything more intimately because it's relaxed. It's not just massive, grotesque conglomerations of muscles holding together in tension. So it's a really important feeling to start feeling. Once you've done that, once you feel like you could just fly away, like that, because you just feel like you weigh nothing, that's a massive puzzle that you've solved, and you've gone on to the next level of understanding how this system works and how it interrelates with physical movement. And by solving that puzzle, you start to see, actually, yeah, right, I get it. This is not just some kind of, you know, superstitious airy-fairy nonsense, like I must stand like this, and, you know, some kind of power is going to transform me internally till I've got some kind of mystical force. You start seeing, right, this is actually a highly sophisticated physiological approach to the human form and how it functions and interconnects with intention. That's a major breakthrough in your training. So from that, we can start then seeing, like, well, you can see why there's some health benefits here. I don't really want to get too into the whole health thing. I think a lot of that stuff needs to be looked at with a very scientific, critical eye. But we can say, in the simplest terms, just in terms of relaxing and learning how to relax, there's some enormous benefits to that. And if we can start then extending it to the whole body, then just through relaxation alone and learning to get rid of tension, that's going to have lots of effects on well-being. Next, of course, then we want to start bringing it into using the arms. And the reason to do that with the legs first is, for whatever reason, maybe just because these are such big muscle groups, it's far easier to get that effect in your legs than it is in your upper body. I know it took me much longer, like years longer really, to get that full feeling in my upper body. You know, that moment of the shoulders just giving way, and then realizing just how tense I've been all my life. Whereas in the legs, that came very, very quickly, but it can be different for different people. The starting with the hands, again, it's like this idea of over-determination. There's lots of different things and reasons why we want to then start bringing it into the hands. One of the things to think about is that, remember, we're reconnecting intention to our body, or we're improving that connection. Yet, you know, for people who have hands, I know not everyone does, but in every society, your hands are like absolutely critical to how you go about your daily life. So our interconnection between intention and hands is already quite strong. As Wang Shenjai points out, actually it's usually stronger on one side than the other. That's the process of socialization in many ways. It's reinforced through repetitive tasks, eating, writing, you know, things that are working, tasks that you have to do. So that's kind of unlocking a conceptual puzzle for us, that actually this thing that Wang Shenjai is talking about, that this link between our intent and our body has been repressed socially. So it starts unlocking that puzzle, and we start saying, right, okay, we've got like a stronger link with our hands and our arms. And we want to bring that linked intention back into this full upper body area. So we can talk more about some of the details and conceptual details, but what we want to do now is continue to carry on with problem solving, puzzle solving, setting ourselves these physical puzzles and learning like that. So start with our basic posture. I usually say it's supposed to be shoulder width. I think that's a little bit too narrow. So everyone always says shoulder width. Doesn't feel that comfortable to me. So, and when you see people do it, they're usually not. They're usually a little bit. If you think, how big do you think your shoulders are? It's usually a little bit wider like that. And your feet can be pointing I always usually prefer my feet pointing straight forward, but they can point out like that. And the idea is that this should never be more than 60 degrees. That can relieve the pressure a little bit. The more in that way, the more they have to work in terms of balance, and anyway, it just feels better for my legs. That's assuming you've not got some condition or issue with your leg, which necessarily means that you have to move it. From there, it's exactly the same posture as before, and we've already kind of worked on solving some of the problems, some of the puzzle down here. And we're going to lift the arms and we're going to hold out. We're going to hold out this way. And I think if anyone's watching this far, you already know it's a very famous posture. And there's all kinds of variations that you see. For me, I just think about them as kind of different zhuang. So arms up this way completely, flat, or arms down this way. This, I think, is a much better beginner posture. It relaxes everything a little bit better. That immediately puts tension into the shoulders. It creates a more difficult puzzle for the body to solve, because there's more muscular tension there to hold the shoulders up like that. So relax down like that. So you're creating a curve like that. And we want to be careful not. You see that all the time, like fingers curled in. I'll talk about why these things happen another time in another video. But we want to talk for now about just setting a puzzle and solving a puzzle. So the first puzzle we want to set is really quite mundane, and that's just about endurance. And there's lots of ways to think about this. So I remember myself 2 minutes being like a really long time, and just timing it. And I think timing it in some ways is really negative. It creates tension, and also worrying about how long you're holding the posture for creates tension straight away. This is not supposed to be like a torture exercise. It's not supposed to be like through pain you achieve some higher level of consciousness. That's Hellraiser or something like that. It's supposed to be gradual. It's supposed to be achievable. It's supposed to be comfortable. So you don't have to think like, I'm just going to agonizingly hold it for, a very long period of time, no matter how painful it is and stuff like that. That's not what we want, and it brings the wrong kind of development, because we want to relax. And when you start doing that, we're so habituated to using too much tension that we start, really tensing up and trying to hold the posture up. So what I would recommend is not doing that. What I would recommend is like setting aside an amount of time, and it could be anything. It could be 10 minutes or it could be an hour. And what you're going to do within that hour is standing, but not all of that hour, or not all of that 10 minutes. What Yao Zhong says is like, do what's comfortable, then a little bit beyond, because that's building your muscular strength in terms of being able to hold the posture. But we don't want to go down the wrong path of starting to, just like we can with a punch, drilling in the wrong posture. So let's say we're going to do 15 minutes. Set the alarm clock for 15 minutes, but don't look at the time. And just what you're going to do is you're going to hold, and you're going to hold until it feels like you're really no longer comfortable. You just hold it a little bit longer, a few seconds longer, then you can just relax. And this exercise from Tai Chi is really good exercise. Just loosen off like that, loosen off your neck. It's also a good idea just to warm up a little bit and loosen up before you start anyway. Just same with any exercise. Loosen up, and then go back. Don't worry about any mental visualization or anything like that at this point. This is just purely about initial stages, just getting the feeling for the posture and just building some resilience around the posture. Eventually that alarm clock's going to go off after 15 minutes. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter how long you've held the posture for in individual. What matters is, if you're diligent and you're prepared to put the effort in, you hold it, relax, then okay, shake off, hold it again, relax. Some really interesting things will then start happening later on. You might find towards the end of the 15 minutes that actually you can hold for longer, which seems very counterintuitive. And certainly when you hold for longer periods of time, that's something that people experience. If you do this exercise over an hour, so people do it over half an hour or an hour, like beginners who are very serious and they say, well, I'm going to set aside an hour and I'm just going to keep doing it, will very often report that at the end of the hour, they can hold for longer than they could at the start of the hour. And that's because you're relaxing more. If you do that, then you've solved a really advanced puzzle that a lot of what we think about as being difficult in holding postures is that you're using too much muscular strength. Imagine like tensing up that as hard as you can. You couldn't hold that for like more than a minute or so before you started cramping up and what have you. But then realising that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing all the time. You may as well be like that. You just don't realise it. You think that's your normal physical posture. Actually, you're really tense. That's very closely interlinked with your social existence. It can make you more tense like that. So do your 15 minutes and set aside some time every day for doing that. And then you can extend it to 20, half an hour, and an hour. It's not the only thing that's going to be going on. So at this stage, all you try to do is just build up muscular resistance, and it's really not a problem to. You can even do it while you're watching the news or something like that, because at the moment it's not about the mental induction. It's not about the mental aspect. It's purely about the physical endurance aspects of it. But we are going to have to move on to mental induction next to set our next problem. So let's say we've been doing that. We've been doing that for a month, and you start to get some feelings that are quite interesting. And there's one very particular feeling that we're after, and just beginning to capture this feeling is the next puzzle that we want to solve. And I think it's the last thing we want to talk about in this particular video, and that's beginning to feel like you're holding a ball, maybe like a ball that's made out of paper or something like that. What you're going to do is you're going to use a very simple mental visualization that there's a paper ball in your arms and that you're holding it, and you can feel it. You can feel the resistance of it. There's a couple of ways of doing this. One is to really tense, so that you tense up as hard as you possibly can, and then it feels like there's something solid there. That's not what you want. That's the opposite of what you want. That's what you're gonna now embark on, like a lifelong cat and mouse game with your standing, where you've got to constantly check yourself. Is that what I'm doing? Am I trying to create that feeling by tensing? If you are, then you're not solving the problem. The problem here has become a little bit more sophisticated. And what's going to happen is you're going to solve this problem in your arms before you solve the same problem that you solved in your legs in most cases, like this point of relaxation. Before you get these muscles really relaxing, you're going to solve this problem of creating the right feeling, this puzzle. It's not a problem. So I've got to stop saying problem. It's a puzzle. Solve this puzzle. Solving puzzles is a wonderful thing. So you've got to relax, and then you've got to start feeling this very counterintuitive thing that the more you relax, the more you can intensify this feeling. And then when you feel that the feeling is quite intense, then you've just got to double check. Am I tensing my muscles? And then you just got to put your visualization, your mental connection into your shoulders and then out into your arms, and just think about telling them to relax. So thinking, visualizing, relax. So you're changing the visualization now from you've stopped for a moment visualizing that you're holding this ball, and now you start thinking about your arms and your shoulders, and you, just like you did with your legs, you tell them relax. You think, but not in a stressed way. Just focus on them, try and relax, and then as they relax, you feel it just give way a little bit and relax a little bit. Then go back to just. It's almost like in your mind you want to pull in like that, but you don't do the actual movement, and you just hold. Now you want to try and intensify that feeling. Once you get that sense that you're holding like a paper ball, and you begin to get this feeling that there's something there, you've solved like a really great a great puzzle. This is a great mystery. It's the ancients said, holding Tao in stillness, creating form from nothing. That's this. And you're holding Tao. You're understanding how contradiction creates physical senses, which is really, really amazing puzzle to have solved. You're going to solve it on higher levels later on, but just to get to this stage and just to have this physical sensation, and then to be able, suppose stage 2 of the puzzle is then to engage in this cat and mouse game of, am I tensing? I'm tensing, so I need to relax. And then this very counterintuitive thing where the more you relax, the more you get this sensation, the more you get this feeling. I'll talk about why that happens in another video. And then when you've solved this puzzle, you're like, oh wow, I've solved that puzzle. Then you'll realise that your legs have tensed up again. So then you've got to connect these two together and try and do both. And then that then begins your intention, because when you do this, your intention is all on this part of your body. I mean, it's completely obvious when I say it, but if I don't say it and you just do it, it probably won't occur to you that your intention is all in this part of your body, and it's been taken away from the lower body, and that starts teaching you about how intention can be linked to particular parts of the body over other parts of the body. And we're trying to create a sensation where the intention is linked into the whole body in this much more intimate, interconnected way. So the next puzzle to solve, before you even try and make this more intense, which is what we want to do, is to start holding within your intention this thing that's going on here and this thing that's going on with relaxing your legs, and holding those two together like that and feeling both. And if you can get that, then you've gone a really long way. You've gone a really, really long way on the journey. You've unpacked some of the key puzzles of standing, and that's a tremendous achievement. Don't fret about, it doesn't matter. Let's say you set aside half an hour to practice this every day. It doesn't matter whether you hold the posture for half an hour. What matters is at some point within that half an hour, you get to this puzzle stage where you've got the feeling here and you've got the feeling here. It doesn't matter if you just have it for 20 seconds or it keeps flitting in and out. You've got it and then you've not got it. That doesn't matter at all. What matters is to make that breakthrough. And once you've made that breakthrough, then we can start building on it and exploring more complex puzzles, different puzzles. And eventually some of those puzzles are going to have solutions that are things like hitting with real speed and power with small structural movements. That's the journey we're going to go on. So in the next video, we'll continue talking about, we'll move on to the next puzzle that we want to solve and talk about why some of these things happen. That's it for this video. One love, and I'll see you in the next one.